What happens when you combine two iconic strategy games, chess and Pokémon? No, not that Pokémon chess. This is a Chesslocke, a variation of a Nuzlocke that uses chess pieces as a basis for roles, such as your starter being the king, knights who can only use 60 base power moves or lower, bishops who can only learn 2 attacking moves, and others. How do these restrictions change the way a Nuzlocke is played? Let's find out. As you can see, our Chesslocke will be set in black too. To force some tough strategy calls, this Nuzlocke is also randomized. This means that I won't be able to plan my rolls out based on the gym types, because I won't know them until I go in. As we make our way up to Bianca, maybe the biggest decision of the entire run is upon us. It's time to pick our starter. Whatever we choose must be on our team for the entirety of the challenge as our king, and just like in chess, if our king dies, the run is over. With starter options of Pidgey, Exew, and Litwick, it was a pretty easy call for me. Although Chandelure is one of my favorite Pokemon, its extremely late initial evolution is a turnoff, but with randomized items, there's no guarantee we even find a Duskstone to evolve Lampent. So we choose Exew, who also carries a very late initial evolution, but will hopefully end up as the strong attacker, Haxorus. Our king, who is fittingly a girl boss, is named Libby, and we go on to face our new rival, Magnus. And with only normal moves, we have no way to hit the Ghost-type Litwick. Luckily, the run doesn't officially begin until we get Pokeballs, which we receive soon after, and head up to Route 19 for our first encounter of the run. Anger, the Rapidash, joins the squad as our first knight, meaning they can only use damaging moves of 60 base power or lower. Luckily, the Fire type doesn't learn many high damaging moves, so it doesn't restrict us a ton. Our Route 20 encounter was yet another Fire type, Buster the Growlithe. He becomes our first of 8 pawns, a role that can only include Pokemon that are the first evolution stage of their line. Pawns aren't allowed to evolve, which is fine since there's a chance we never find a Firestone for Growlithe. Our final encounter before the gym is up at Floessi Ranch, which ends up being Dory the Finneon. We assign them to the Bishop role, meaning they can only have 2 damaging moves learned at the same time. After a bit of grinding, we face off against Magnus at the ranch. We got Libby to a high enough level to learn Assurance, a super effective move against Litwick. But I was caught a little off guard by this battle, meaning she wasn't quite at full HP. The first Dark move did about half, but immediately procced the 30% chance of Flame Body, which burned our starter, making this a bit more difficult. An Astonish, followed by a Fire Spin, left Libby on 6 HP. Lumineon carried no water moves, and with Anger and Buster also bringing weak options, I gambled. And Assurance did not kill. A Minimize and the chip damage from Burn and Fire Spin left her with just 2 HP. I was lucky enough that they didn't attack the last turn, so I swapped into Buster on another Minimize, and he connected with Bite right away. Luckily, Magnus had just the singular Pokemon, saving us from potential disaster early in the run. Feeling pretty bad about our team's overall strength, one move would completely change that. Libby learns Dragon Rage at level 10. That is a crazy OP move to learn at such a low level, but I'm not complaining. The rest of our team can hardly dent most of the Pokemon we've been coming up against. Heading into the first gym, now is a good time to mention how the randomizer works. While this gym is usually normal, all the trainer battles are random. Each trainer is typed, meaning they'll have a team that shares a singular type throughout. In gyms specifically, the trainers and leaders will all have the same type, just like they would in the main games, meaning that Charon is going to be a grass-type leader based on these trainers. While Libby could sweep with Dragon Rage just like they did with the trainers, there's another wrinkle in the strategy here. As I said a moment ago, pawns can't evolve, unless they beat a gym leader on their own, just like a real pawn reaching the end of the board. Seeing the early game as potentially our only real opportunity to evolve a pawn, I decided to grind up Buster in an attempt to take advantage of a good type matchup. Charon leads with Roserade, who outspeeds our dog. The second Magical Leaf landed a critical hit, but as long as the third Magical Leaf didn't high roll, Buster could take the kill. I was right, which left Buster with 3 HP, and an Ember took out Roserade. After a level up, 5 HP was all our pawn had left, but this was his opportunity. A C-Dot was sent in as the ace. Hoping to OHKO, we sent out an Ember, which didn't quite take the kill. Luckily, C-Dot used Growth, wasting their opportunity to strike. Sharon used a potion, but it wasn't enough to keep the Acorn alive as Buster officially ranked up by taking the gym badge. Now, if we were to ever find a Firestone, Buster would evolve and qualify as a Knight. I figured that would be the best role for him just in case we lose the typing with Anger. However, he would head to the box for now as he no longer fits the role of a pawn. Libby was always our lead as we continued forward. She was the only Pokemon who could hold their own thanks to Dragon Rage. Without that move, this team is extremely fragile. Our next encounter would be at Verbank Complex and, well, at least we know where to grind. That is unfortunately the only available encounter before the second gym. Yeah, there's only 5 total encounters before Gym 2 in this game, so we're heading into it with just 3 team members. As long as it's not Ice, Libby should be fine to just sweep everything though. Well, alright, I guess we're leaning on Anger for this one. After Libby outspeeds Cubchoo, we send in our Knight who 2-shots Glalie. We grinded up for a bit so that Anger was up to level before going back in for the second trainer. They send out Mamoswine, who is just about the worst type matchup that we could have had, but luckily we're so early into the game that this guy doesn't even have a single ground move, meaning we're still safe to take the KO and the W. Roxy sends out Glalie, who is OHKO'd, and Beartick would take an extra Flame Wheel, but they met the same fate. I guess I was worried for nothing. After an unnecessarily long time spent at PokeStar Studios, we're able to head to the dock at Burbank, bound for the familiar Castelia City. Concerned about our lack of sheer numbers, I went up to Route 204 to grab our next encounter. That ended up being Grovyle, who I would catch and designate as our Rook. That particular role's only restriction is that the Pokemon can't use any moves that have a percentage chance to status the opponent, so it's pretty open to basically anything besides fire and electric for the most part. We trek through the Castelia sewers searching for Team Plasma and the gym leader. Now, one of the most interesting aspects of this challenge is that we're limited on how many Pokemon we can catch. Just like in chess, we can only have a total of 16 team members. This presents the challenge of picking and choosing what encounters to catch and which to pass up, just like we did with Audino in Verbank. I didn't see a big use case for Blossom, so I decided to pass on the grass type, as we're already at almost a third of our total Pokemon for the run. Also worth noting is the final piece that I haven't touched on yet, the Queen. Just like the King, she sees no restrictions in movesets at all, but the Queen must be female. These Blossoms are the very first female encounters we've had, but again, I didn't see them as a worthwhile catch. Magnus and I handled a bunch of grunt and trainer battles before Berg showed up in the sewers, who invited us to take on his gym. Wanting to get just one more encounter before said gym, I headed into the Relic Passage and caught Bruce the Lantern. Looking at his moveset, Bruce fits perfectly as a bishop, with Confuse Ray and Thunder Wave aiding a water and eventually electric attacking moves. This would make him our second and final bishop, barring a pawn evolution later, and he would take an immediate spot on the team as Dory was sent to the box. We headed into the Castelia gym now as a team of 4. The first trainer's Misdreavus revealed it to be a ghost-type gym, a type that we had a decent matchup against. However, a first-turn Confuse Ray would cause a couple of self-inflicted wounds, leading me to swap out Libby as Claude saw battle for the first time. A Pursuit did the job before Lampent procced me to switch to Bruce. A couple of water guns was all it took as the first trainer went down. Dragon Rage, and more Dragon Rage got us up top to face off against Berg. He sent out Litwick, who immediately burned Libby due to Flame Body. An Assurance does take them out, but with just over half health, we swap out our starter in favor of Bruce. Our bishop would also get burned by Will-O-Wisp and couldn't 2-shot with Water Gun, so we had to swap again. This time into Anger after Shuppet was healed by a potion. Flame Wheel wasn't quite enough to KO, but a Curse would end up as a self-kill. Claude would come in to face the ace, Frillish. Thanks only to the water resistance, Claude was able to use a mix of Pursuit and Absorbs to kill off the water ghost type after a ton of turns and recovers from the opponent. The mysterious Colress was waiting for us as we went north through Route 4. A couple Dragon Rages and Water Guns were enough to easily wipe out their team, and we grabbed a couple more encounters. Wally, the Magnemite from the Desert Resort, who I made a pawn, and Yanmega from the Relic Castle, whom I decided to pass on. As I was roaming around the Desert Resort, certainly not finding any better encounters, and definitely not finding out what the common Pokemon in the area was, I stepped into this trainer battle. A mighty Haxorus was our opponent, and this was extremely scary to face. I gambled by leaving Libby in, as I felt any swap would be digging ourselves a deep hole. Dragon Rage would leave Libby with just a few HP as she sent in a super effective dual chop that missed. The Sandstorm chip damage left Libby alive with a single hit point. We obviously swapped, and I decided on Bruce, our bulkiest mon. He was hit with a hefty dual chop, which almost certainly would have killed our king had the opponent used that move last turn. Our first item used in the run was a super potion to aid Bruce, as I'd done my best to go without any heals. Sometimes with a randomizer, that's what happens, and that's why I've yet to try a hardcore Nuzlocke. But for now, healing is alright if it's our only winning scenario. But even with the potion, Dragon Rage and Sandstorm chip added up to 45 out of his 89 HP, just over half. In retrospect, my decision to swap back out was really questionable, but I got mad lucky as Haxorus used Scary Face instead of attacking. My mind had been made up. The only way I saw surviving this fight was to sack a Pokemon that allowed a free switch into a fully healed Bruce, allowing for a Thunder Wave to hopefully give us a few turns of paralysis. So with Claude in, I healed Bruce back up once more. Dual Chop did a number, but Claude lived. It was at this point that I had to make the tough decision to sack the Pokemon we just caught. Wally would swap into a Dragon Rage, which was enough for the kill 10 times over. The first death of the run was Wally's first appearance in battle. But the death wasn't in vain just yet. The plan was in action as Bruce sent in a Thunder Wave after eating a Dragon Rage. Like I said, I'm trying to avoid healing unless absolutely necessary, so I swapped into Anger, who was still at full HP. He took a soft slash, but with the chip damage, I knew Dragon Rage would kill off Anger if it connected. Hoping for a paralysis hit, I healed Anger, who would take another slash. This time, it was a crit though. I felt like at this point, our bed was made. Anger didn't have enough HP to survive multiple attacks, so I thought my best option was to heal Bruce and hope for Haxorus to be paralyzed. I sent off the potion as the opponent sent out a Dragon Rage, killing off Anger, our second death of the fight. At this point, the many turns of chip damage were the only thing keeping our hopes alive, as Haxorus was down to about a third HP. Bruce was back in and our bishop used Confuse Ray, as his attacking moves were both resisted by the dragon. Finally, something went our way as the opponent hit themselves in confusion right away. Just our second attack of the entire fight, Water Gun was enough to bring Haxorus within range to hit themselves in confusion one more time, ending the fight. But not before 2 of our 5 Pokemon fell. I had felt it the entire run so far. This team was weak, but there was simply nothing we could do about it besides build the team back up and try and get stronger. Thanks to his performance in the first gym, Buster was welcomed back to the team with open arms, this time as a knight. We were still on the prowl for his evolution item, but for now he was the only option at this role. Beaten and battered, we made our way up to Nimbasa City. Luckily, this opened up a chance for a couple of encounters on routes 5 and 16. We caught Doug, the Diglett, to fill the pawn position, and Chuckles, the Mime Jr., who would be designated to the same role, but they'd sit in the box for now. Elisa typically carries electric-type Pokemon, and shockingly, this would actually hold true in the randomizer. This once again presented a possible opportunity to promote a pawn, this time being Doug, who is immune to electric and also brings the super effective Magnitude along. The few trainers went smoothly, and it was time for Doug to take the spotlight. Literally. A clutch Magnitude 10 knocked out Ampharos, the first of 3 Pokemon for the gym leader. Raichu was next and used a quick attack that did over half of Doug's HP. Magnitude didn't high roll this time, landing a 7, which wasn't enough to take the kill. Assuming another quick attack would be sent in, I had to give up on Doug's potential promotion, and Libby would come in to clean up the fight. 2 Dragon Rages would take out Raichu, but the final Thunderbolt from the electric type did a massive chunk to Libby. Electric would be the final Pokemon out, meaning that Doug wouldn't have been able to sweep anyways thanks to their Levitate. I brought in Buster, whose Flame Wheel didn't do much as they were hit by a strong discharge. Claude resists the type, so we would swap in and tank the electric type move. Quick Attack did almost nothing as Electric sent in a super effective Acid. Oof. I tried to Absorb, but it was just simply way too weak, and the Eel sent in another Acid, killing our Rook. Bruce's attacks are both resisted, so we sent out a Confuse Ray first, hoping for some luck, and it paid off right away yet again. A very soft Spark would then proc the opponent's Citrus Berry before a second straight Confusion hit. Water Gun was able to land a crit, leaving Electric with a sliver of health, and one more water move would finish it off. Our 4th gym badge, but it came at the cost of our 3rd death. The rotation battle blocking our path to Driftvale was taken care of by several Dragon Rages and a Flame Wheel as we now approached the 5th gym. Before we headed in though, we paid a visit to some former Team Plasma members who requested we look after a certain Pokemon. Now, gift Pokemon are always random, but apparently this is a different circumstance since it is story related. Since it was our only possible encounter in the city, we gladly accepted the Zorora and named it Randall. He would serve as our new Rook after Claude's untimely demise. As you can see, our only open pieces now are 4 more pawns, 1 knight, and our queen, so we had to pass on a ton of encounters moving forward. However, we did accept the Deerling on Route 6, which turned out to be a Pichu named Kachow. They'd be our 5th pawn, and if they somehow ever won a gym on its own, we did have a Thunderstone for potential evolution into Raichu. Chargestone Cave would be a Hitmonchan whom I passed on. And for now, if I don't mention any new encounters, I probably just skipped it because it didn't fit our team build. This happened a lot, so I'll spare you the time. It was time for us to take on the 5th gym, which turned out to be Dark type. Even though our team consisted of 4 first stage Evos out of 5 Mons, just about everyone played a part in the trainer battles, none of which were too difficult. Clay would lead with Nuzleaf, and we had Libby out front as normal. She'd finally learned Dragon Claw earlier in the gym, which replaced the slightly inaccurate Dual Chop. And after taking out Nuzleaf, she'd also learned Dragon Dance, which could come in handy later on. She was, however, left at close to half HP as Sableye entered, so I played it safe and swapped into Bruce. We went for the Thunder Wave Confuse Ray combo, and boy did Sableye have a rough time. Fully paralyzed on turn 1, hit themselves in confusion twice in a row after that, paralyzed again on turn 4 before finally getting off a move, landing a strong feint attack. But Bruce was relentless, sending out another Confuse Ray, again leading directly to a hit. A Water Gun would finish them off as Clay sent in his final Pokemon, Liepard. Libby would come back in and hit 2 Dragon Claws to claim the 5th gym badge. As we completed a couple of side quests, we ended up back in Relic Passage where Bruce was found. And the great luck there continued, as we found a Firestone. This was a massive find, as Buster would now be able to fully evolve into Arcanine. And as we made our way through Chargestone Cave, Randall evolved into Zoroark. And with the new level cap of 39, Libby was finally able to evolve into Fracture. Suddenly, the team was taking shape. The Mistralton City Gym was next in the docket, and I have no clue what the odds are of this, but the randomized type once again matched up with the original, as Skylight and crew would bring flying types to the match. Bruce, Randall, and Libby easily fought through the trainers, and the leader would be next up. She led with Dragonite, who was scary on paper, but a Thunder Wave into Volt Switch allowed a pretty clean swap into Libby, who took the KO with Dragon Claw. The extremely defensive Mandibuzz lived 1 claw, but not the next, and Togetic was OHKO'd by the Dragon move. After the badge win, we flew over to Lentimus Town with Professor Juniper as we made our way towards the 7th gym in Opelucid City. Honestly, nothing really happened in the quaint little town besides catching another pawn, a Cranidos named Lava. Oh yeah, and we caught our final knight, but that was more of a self-defense decision to be honest. After navigating through a cave with Bianca, we found ourselves in Nandela Town, where we'd catch our 7th pawn and our 14th overall team member, Carl the Golette. We also saved our 2nd Master Ball for whatever might be hiding as Cobalion. On second thought, let's save that Master Ball for the Queen. Our trek to Opelucid continued as we heard an old folktale, embarrassed a girl who was practicing her singing, and found a couple more encounters to pass on. Our queen was on the way. It was just a matter of time. But we'd entered the penultimate gym as a team of 5. Turns out the gym was fire-typed, which was good news for Bruce. He easily swept all the trainers, except for the triple battle. The opponents had been whittled down pretty significantly, but unfortunately, before Doug could use Dig, he was hit by a strong flame charge which killed off our pawn. For being the weakest piece on the team, Doug had impressed for a long time, punching above his weight at every turn. But sadly, this moment was bound to come. The triple battle was finished off directly after he fell. The newly caught Carl would take his place, flaunting 3 immunities as a ground ghost type. This little guy was fierce, and he wanted to prove himself badly. As we approached the gym leader, he begged to lead, hoping to sweep and earn a promotion. He went out against Drayden's lead Embor, and he was hit with Flamethrower that didn't quite kill, but his returned Earthquake wasn't enough for the KO either. I applaud his spirit, but we couldn't afford another loss, so Bruce swapped in as Embor was healed up. He OHKO'd with Surf and did the same to Torkoal. Ninetales delivered 2 quick attacks before falling, which would end up earning us the 7th gym badge. Team Plasma suddenly wanted to freeze over Unova for some reason, setting us off on another side quest. None of the grunts were a particular challenge, and neither was Zinzolin. He led with Cradilly, and Carl was still proving his worth out front. He knocked out the lead with a couple of Earthquakes before we swapped into Buster to deal with Amoonguss. Back to the gym challenge, we made our way over to Humalao City, evolving Libby into Haxorus along the way. It had been a long journey, but she was finally at her full potential as king. Libby and Buster would tag team through the water-turned-bug-type gym, and the leader, Marlin, sent out a Dustox who would Toxic Libby after a Dragon Dance. A Dragon Claw on the next turn would OHKO, and the same can be said about the following Mothim. Volcarona, however, would barely survive before returning a very strong Silver Wind. I was getting a little too careless, and it almost cost us the entire run. Luckily, that didn't crit, and Libby lived to tell the tale. That was simply way too close for comfort. Bruce swapped in on another massive Silver Wind. I certainly did not expect this from a 60 base power move. We could not afford another swap, so I had to hope that Bruce could clutch this. But he didn't outspeed, and after getting the 10% Omni boost last turn, Bruce barely survives on 5 HP. His rebuttal was more than enough to take the KO, clutching the gym badge. That was scary. Well, after that, we ventured south into and through the seaside cave before reaching Team Plasma's ship on the coast. We handled a bunch more grunts and a fight with Zinzolin before they flew away like cowards. After chasing them down at the giant chasm, we boarded the ship once more, attempting to release the captive Kairu. Zinzolin again was no match for us as Carl wiped out Zebstrika and Jolteon, with Buster taking out Galvantula. Colress is the next line of defense, leading with Rhyperior. We had Libby out front, who deals about half damage to the foe with Dragon Claw. The drill run that was sent back did about the same. Another turn of trading blows left Libby in position to outspeed and kill, but a full restore would make this interesting, to say the least. I felt that our only play here was to heal, assuming Drill Run would kill any Pokemon that I swapped in. Rhyperior sent in another Drill Run that this time landed a critical hit. Luckily, Libby survived in the red, as we'd have to heal again. This time, the opponent sent in a Hammer Arm, which did a decent number, but Libby would crit the next Dragon Claw, knocking out the foe. We were finally able to swap in Bruce freely to face Solrock, who died in one hit. Sudowoodo survived through Sturdy but would fall the next turn, and Randall would swap in to deal with Kabutops. A couple of Night Slashes left them in the red when we were just barely within crit range for Slash to kill. A huge error on my part to assume that we were outside of crit territory, and it cost us Randall's life. Libby once again had to come in and clean up my mess, taking out Kabutops and Archeops, winning the battle. Head hanging, we walked into the control room to find Ghetsis monologuing before he stormed out, and the Shadow Triad challenged us, one of which did their best Lance impression carrying multiple Dragonites, but none of these battles were any issue. The biggest issue was that we had a massive hole in our team now, right at the end, and it was all my fault. We chased after Ghetsis and were present for the heroic return of N before the old man challenged us, our final test before the Elite Four. His lead Sawsbuck was a terrible matchup for Bruce, but a Volt Switch brought in Buster who would take the kill. Glaceon was also OHKO'd by our fire type, and we'd bring in Libby to take out Raticate. Granbull served up a shockingly strong takedown after surviving a Dragon Claw, but they'd fall in the next turn. Bruce would swap back in to deliver a strong Volt Switch on Braviary, which led to Buster ultimately taking the KO. Wigglytuff survived a couple of hits, but would fall to Flame Wheel, ending the battle and the Team Plasma storyline. All that was left was a trip to Victory Road and the Pokémon League. Route 23 was the connecting path and one of our 2 remaining spots for encounters, and it was here that we'd find our queen. While this was not really the queen I had in mind, we were running out of options, and I just lost my Dark-type coverage, so Vullaby it was. Lurleen would fill the void that existed on our team since the very beginning, joining a team that was hopeful of winning the Unova Championship in mere hours. After a decent amount of battles that saw Libby on the bench for a while due to her nearly eclipsing the level cap, team members Bruce, Buster, and specifically Carl were punching above their pay grade. The little guy was knocking out Pokemon left and right, ones that belonged to ace trainers. A Wobbuffet was the final scare before he reached the league, but Lurleen was able to completely stall out Destiny Bond's PP and take them down before evolving into Mandibuzz. And with that, the team was complete. Or as complete as it was going to get. We arrived at the Pokemon League with this team. The Spunky Pawn, Carl. Our newest addition, Lurleen, the Queen. Bruce, the Bishop. Buster, our very first pawn who was promoted tonight, and of course, our starter and the girl boss king herself, Libby, who has carried this team on her back through thick and thin. Is this a Hall of Fame team? We'll see. Let the random Elite Four begin. Chantel was first up, sending out a Ninjask. That was easy work for Libby as Fortress revealed this team to be Bug-type, just like the final gym. Buster would have taken an easy kill, but Sturdy saved Fortress before Chantel sent out a full restore. 2 more moves was enough to take down the Mon, and Bruce would come in to face Armaldo. He gets crit by Slash, but that's no matter, as he took the KO with Surf. Wormadam was easy work for Buster again, with their quad weakness to fire. A fairly easy Elite Four W in the books. Grimsley was next up, and he sent out Seismitoad first. I decided to set up a couple of Dragon Dances this time, allowing Okos against the Toad and Flygon. But Rhyperior was a little scary based on our last battle with Colress. So I played it safe and swapped into Bruce, who took another easy, quad-effective KO. Lurleen would make her debut against the final Pokemon, Torterra. A couple of flies and an air slash later, and Grimsley was done. Caitlin's typical psychic types were turned into fighting as she led with Emboar. Libby's newest addition to the move pool, Earthquake, came in clutch here, taking the easy kill. We set up a Dragon Dance as, of course, Hitmonchan used a Focus Punch that nearly OHKO'd Libby. Sheesh, that was not good luck. But assuming we'd outspeed and KO with Dragon Claw, I gambled. And won that gamble. Too close for comfort, but it worked. I knew we could take out Scrafty, who also attempted a Focus Punch, but never even had the chance to flinch as Libby took another kill. Metacham was last, and this one was easy. Libby sent off one last claw to end it. Man, it was pretty smooth sailing, but that focus punch nearly gave me a heart attack. Marshall would be the final foe before the champion. He sent in Bisharp, who fell to Earthquake immediately. Aggron coming next would confirm that this was a Steel-type team. And I know what you're thinking. This was simply an easy sweep for Libby with Earthquake. And I'd probably be thinking that too. But somebody wanted their chance. Their chance to show what they were made of and take out a Pokemon in the Elite Four. And there was no better time for it. Carl wanted this, and his quad-effective Earthquake could do it. So, I sent him out per his wishes. So long, Carl. Mad respect, buddy. In Carl's honor, the team took out the final 3 Pokemon and would face the champion. After all, his name would still be written in the Hall of Fame if they pulled this off. It was time to face Iris for all the marbles. She sent out Masquerain, who would fall to Libby after 2 turns, and as she sent out Scolipede, it was time for a victory lap. This thing was all but won. Lurleen would take out the foe, and Buster the next 2, Bruce the 5th Mon, and Libby, who started it all, would end it with one last knockout. This was a super fun challenge, and I really did have fun with the extra strategy element of the rolls, and I hope you all enjoyed it. Randomizers are always a joy, even if it does have an anticlimactic ending every now and then like this one. Let me know in the comments if you like this type of challenge and if you would be interested in seeing more like it. And if you watched this far, you may as well subscribe and maybe consider joining the channel as a member or a patron. These are the members who support me, and I can't thank them enough. But for now, that's the Chesslocke. And I'm Hershey, signing off. Thanks for watching.